from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. It's Friday night, and I'm happy to be here with you guys. Give us a call if you want to join our late-night national town hall conversation. The number, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. And Democrats continue to seek redistricting in a few states, trying to regain their majority. Getting out of the minority that they're currently in. And we saw that a couple of weeks ago with the Supreme Court weighing in, and we're seeing it again. And it seems to me that Democrats, and listen, I don't put it past Republicans, but it seems like Democrats are always fixated on their political power, right? It's not always about the issues. The issues are what drive the power with Republicans. And this is why you see them getting on caught, right, on the downside, or on the getting the short end of the stick, I should say, of ballot measures, of ballot harvesting, things like that, because that's just not the way most conservatives think, right? They think like, look, leave me alone. Like Reagan said, get off my back, get out of my pocket. And they just want to live and let live. But the others, they believe in government. They believe in the strong arm of the government, the iron fist of the government. So that's what they use. They use the government to beget more government, to beget more power. And we see it play out all the time. And it's like the art of war with Sun Tzu. He points out many things, but we have to think like they think, right? You have to think the way your enemy thinks in order to try and stay a step ahead of them. Otherwise, te chavate. You're screwed. Anyway, McCarthy made a comment in response to the 20 Republicans that voted to not censure Adam Schiff, and saying, look, here's his quote. He said, "I think everybody knows my thoughts on Adam Schiff." And he said, that's why I removed him from the House Intelligence Committee. You have a number of members on principle that sat and argued for the last 4 years with President Trump that you had to have due process and voted that way. And I think that a number of them believe that they should have gone to the House Ethics Committee first. So anyway, I think they should have censured Adam Schiff. Why not, right? But it didn't happen, and Representative Anna Luna is at it again. I know they're doing, they made a second run at this, so I'll keep you posted as that begins to materialize as well. And then there's another story that's big story today. Thousands of protesters were at Dodger Stadium protesting Pride Night because they hosted the nun group, right? Now, this was the nun group that we talked about last night, the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. They're drag queens that dress as nuns, and it's the whole point is to mock the Christianity and the Catholic faith. So thousands of protesters showed up today, which good for them, I say, right? Thousands of religious protesters. This is according to KTLA. Religious protesters held. It's funny how when it's protests for anything, it's just protesters. But when it's religious protesters, they want to put the emphasis here on thousands of religious protesters, as if there's a negative connotation, which I'm pretty sure there is if you're not a religious, quote unquote, person. Anyway, held a prayerful procession outside Dodger Stadium Friday in response to the Dodgers honoring the nun group at their recent Pride event. The Los Angeles Dodgers will be honoring the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence with a Community Hero Award prior to their game against the San Francisco Giants. What a shame. The Sisters are a group of self-described queer and trans nuns who focus on philanthropic work while using humor and irreverent wit to expose the forces of bigotry, complacency, and guilt that chain the human spirit. That's a quote from their website as part of their mission statement. And all I could say is that in their mission statement, as I'm reading it, I can't help but think they themselves, right? They themselves are being bigoted towards the others that don't believe the way they do. Right. And the way you know that is by simply just looking at this, where they're there to mock the others. I haven't seen a Catholic group that their purpose is to mock trans individuals or queer individuals. They may have differences. They may say that, as part of their faith, they disagree with that lifestyle. But I haven't seen anybody openly mocking them in a ridiculous display like what they do to Catholics. So it's just a double standard like usual, and the media tries to always side on behalf of the aggressor instead of the aggrieved. And it says here, they continue, they say, "We're just here. All the faiths are standing united." And that's a quote from our friend Jesse Holguin, who was on this program recently, the former gang member turned activist. Jesse Holguin told KTLA, "We're very angry that the Dodgers invited this group that mocked our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. The rally was organized by Catholics for Catholics and had music, speakers, and prayers, and was held in the parking lot." So we'll get a little update on this. If we could connect with Jesse Holguin, we definitely will, to get an update on exactly what happened. But that's a big story that's circulating today. Thousands ascended on the parking lot at Dodger Stadium to let their voices be heard, and good for them for doing so. Now, in other news, Trump, right? It's Trump mania all over the place. Everybody wants to get a piece of El Trumpito. And he did speak out today, again, echoing what he's been saying in recent days. Listen to this.
"It's no coincidence that these fake charges against me came down the very same day evidence revealed Joe Biden, a very crooked president, took a $5 million bribe from Ukraine. No, there's no coincidence whatsoever, and he took plenty more than that."
So now President Trump maintains his innocence, and he says that this whole thing needs to be dropped by the Department of Justice. His legal team has filed that motion to dismiss, as far as I understood, as of their court date on Tuesday. And Judge Cannon has, as far as I understand, hasn't ruled on that, or they intend to motion to dismiss. But what she did rule on was every lawyer that is going to be involved has to get the appropriate security clearance, and that had to be filed as of today, Friday. So we'll keep you posted on everything that's going on with El Trumpito Donaldus Magnus, the 45th president of these United States, El Presidente. Now, just a couple of things I want to get into tonight. Many things, but the first of which, there's a law in Texas that now keeps the smut out of the classroom. And Kimberly Fletcher, she's the founder and president of Moms for America. She's going to join us to tell us all about it. So don't move a muscle. Keep it locked right here. I am Rich Valdez. It's America at Night.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
What they're doing in North Carolina is they are working to take the formulation of the school curriculum away from the State Board of Education and give it to some appointed political board. We all know where that's going. We've seen book bans and whitewashing of history and culture wars getting into the classroom. This is why I declared a state of emergency in public education in North Carolina, because of the confluence of all of these issues that are being debated right now in the General Assembly. These decisions are going to be made over the next few weeks. I want the people of North Carolina to talk with their legislators, to email them, to let them know that they want support for our public schools and our public school teachers, that they don't want culture wars in the classroom, and they want to make sure that our public schools are strong.
Now, that's the governor of the governor of North Carolina, Roy Cooper, defending the inclusion of sexually explicit books in schools, arguing that parents don't have a right to move their kids away from failing schools. And as you heard him just put that out there, but some moms and parents across America are fighting back, and they're finding some wins. Right, you got a win coming out of Texas, where a law was passed to keep the smut out of the classroom. Right, and there's a quote here from country music superstar who was recently on the show, John Rich. He says, "If you can't show it on TV and can't air it on the radio, it shouldn't be in the classroom." I think I agree with that. But Moms for America, big, huge network of hundreds of thousands of moms, played an instrumental role in securing the passage of HB 900, known as the Reader Act. And the new law requires schools to adhere to the same standards of decency that the Federal Communications, the FCC, so meaning what we use here on the radio, imposes on television and radio programming. The bill is also being considered by other state legislatures around the country, and I think that's a huge win, because we've seen it time and time again where parents are showing up even at school board meetings, and they start citing material from these books that their children have access to, and they're told, all right, cut their mic, or they're told, don't say that, there's people here, it's a family thing, whatever, it's a public forum, and everybody's freaking out about, the garbage and perverse and oftentimes pornographic material that young kids are getting in these books. So the founder of Moms for America, Kimberly Fletcher, she's with us, and she's going to walk us through exactly what happened here. Kimberly Fletcher, welcome.
Thank you so much. And I cannot express enough just how big of a win this was. We have seen moms, they call us and talk to us. I've been in school board meetings myself when the moms are reading what their children are being exposed to, and they're told they can't because it's on public TV. Some of them have been escorted out, and some even in handcuffs, because they refuse to stop reading what their children are being exposed to. So when I met with John in January, and we were talking about what can we do to protect the kids, and he said, I observed that the things that they are pushing in the children's schools cannot be in the TV and radio. And he said it just clicked. And I said, well, let's take this to Texas, because Texas is in legislation session only every other year. It's an off year. It's a perfect time. Let's dive in there. So we pulled a bunch of our moms together. Perla Hopkins was just amazing, our state director. And we went and we met with the representative there who was picking up the bill, Jared Patterson. And we told him, they have all these obscenity bills. And we said, you only really need one, one that will include all of these things to protect our kids. And he ran with it. And we were just thrilled it made it all the way to the governor's signature.
Now, Kimberly Fletcher, founder and president of Moms for America, was this solely an idea that hatched with you and John Rich, or did you find a big reception when you announced it to the rest of your membership?
Well, we had to keep it quiet. So we of course, within the national team, we sat down and we talked about it. We worked on strategy. I went and talked to our state team, and everybody was really excited about it. We didn't want it to get out in the national sphere until it was actually signed, because so many things can happen. You get worried about, is this representative going to fight over, is my name on it, is your name on it? And then it gets to the Senate and they've got to have their names on it. But really, there were just a lot of really great people that we worked with. Everybody just kind of referred to Jared Patterson when it came to the, quote, obscenity bills. And so he had several bills on his desk, and I said, let's just pick the best one and refine it to make sure it does everything it needs to do. And he just had an incredible bill. And then when it got to Senate, there was kind of some pushback. Let's use the Senate bill. And we're like, no, we want this one. So it made it all the way, and 5 times during the hearing, And on the floor, Jared Patterson said, it's pretty simple, people. You can't show it on TV, and you can't air it in the radio, you can't have it in the classroom. And it was such a winning argument that when it passed through the House, 10 Democrats voted yes for it as well. And that was pretty exciting. And then, of course, it went through the Senate, and the governor signed it.
Wow. Well, and again, you know, it's of course it's a huge win, and I think it's always a big win when you get something that's so commonsensical like this is, right? It's rare that you get something that makes so much sense and actually works. Oftentimes, they die in committee or whatever because they make so much sense. So I'm glad that you're able to pull that off. Now, what type of traction are you getting now that you've gotten this passed in Texas? And I know that you're promoting it with other state houses. How's that going?
It's actually going pretty fantastically well. So it has actually gone through both houses in Louisiana, and it's on the governor's desk ready to be signed, and that should be any day. We have 6 other states that it is in queue in some form or fashion in their legislature, and I have spoken with 8 different members of Congress, and they are very excited about this. And when I talk about Congress, anybody who knows the Constitution realizes, that they have no control. The federal government has no control over the states or the schools, counties, whatever. Mm-hmm. But I said, you know what, that's true. And I'm bringing this to you, not because you have jurisdiction over that. I'm bringing it to you because you have a bucket of money that the left is constantly using against us to push their nefarious ideas through bribery and blackmail. So let's turn the tables and use it on them for a change. If you're not following the FCC standard, which is a federal standard, then we're not going to give you your money, and we're not going to give you money. If you do, well, then we'll send you more money. And so let's use it. And so they're looking at doing that as well. And at least it's getting traction. The best thing about this is that parents now, especially moms who are showing up in mass at these school board meetings, we now have a tool where we can protect our children. We can go to them and saying, you're breaking the law. And it isn't just about the books or the digital learning that they're getting online. It's also about what comes out of the teacher's mouth or who they bring into the classroom to push this on our children. This is really, really big win and a model legislation that we can take across the country. So we are very excited about it.
And in effect, what you've done is you've put a target on the FCC now, right? Because now the left and the LGBTQI plus movement and all of them are now going to go after the FCC to expand what you can put on television so that they can have that in classrooms and they could still have their way. But
that was my daughter's concern. They're going to change the FCC standards so that they can push it in. Well, one of the main points of this bill really was to take away the protection of education. And in fact, there's a couple of bills that have come out in other states. And Texas also signed HB 18. The governor signed that. That got through legislation. And that was to protect children online from all these, crazy, pernicious ideas that are pushed on them, body shaming and everything else. And, of course, the pornographic ideas. And they had this bill was great because it said, if you're under 18, you have to have parental permission to be able to access these sites. Mm-hmm. But it had a clause in there that said there was an exception that if you largely distributed educational material, you were accepted.
You were exempt.
Well, that's what's
Kimberly
happening
Fletcher, hang on right there. I want to just let everybody know that we're on with Kimberly Fletcher, president of Moms for America. We're discussing HB 18 now, and we're coming right back. Don't go anywhere. 833-4-VALDEZ is the number, 833-4-VALDEZ.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. It's Rich Valdez, and our guest is Kimberly Fletcher, president of Moms for America, discussing a big win that they just had in Texas, where they passed the latest law that ties what can be taught in school curriculums and what can be discussed in classrooms to what we can say on the radio. So if you can't say it on radio, you can't say it in the classroom. These FCC guidelines are are good for somebody, thank God. And it's a bad day for groomers because Texas also banned children from social media content without parental consent. We're talking about a bill called HB 18 that was signed this week by Governor Abbott. Kimberly Fletcher, let's continue.
Yeah, so that kind of ties directly in with the FCC standard bill, the HB 900, because when there's the one clause that says there's an exemption in HB 18 if you're under 18, that if the companies largely distribute educational material, then they're exempt from that parental control, which would have caused us grave concern had it not been for the FCC standard bill. So they both check each other, which really, you're right. The groomers beware because moms are coming. And also another great bill that passed in Texas was Senate Bill 15, where it was protecting women's sports. And we just did a press conference in Washington, D.C. about this, another common sense thing that should not be an issue. And we had members of Congress and several international and national female sports figures who came and shared their own stories of not just not being able to compete fairly, which is a big deal, but also having to undress in these locker rooms with men completely. They're men. Okay, they are men. Could somebody say they are men? And it's just the common sense of this. So I said, one of the things we need to do is we need to tell parents, if you want to turn this around, you do it by teaching your children. They'll rise up and say no. And you just read to them The Emperor's New Clothes every day so that they'll just go out and start telling everybody, hello, the Emperor's naked, put some clothes on the dude.
That's fantastic. Yeah, Kimberly Fletcher, I think that's an excellent idea. And I'm really happy that we're seeing groups like yours really take up some traction because and really make some headway, because I know that for a while, as you were always making waves, but there was also the government getting in the way and putting threat tags on parents and trying to stifle the speech of parents that were organizing. Did you face a lot of problems with that?
We did, actually, quite a bit, unfortunately. It's kind of nice, though. I have to say, I'm really happy about where we are right now, because we do have a voice, and we have this army of moms that have been uniting across the country. Prior to 2020, everybody just looked at me like a helicopter parent with a tinfoil hat, and I'm ringing the bell trying to warn people. In 2020, it was like God showed this big beacon spotlight on all the evil, and all these moms are like, oh my gosh, Kimberly wasn't crazy, it's really happening. And so they just started flooding to our website and saying, what can we do? And it kind of stemmed in 2019. I got a phone call from a mom in Northern Virginia, and she said, my daughter is 13 years old. She got this book that she's supposed to read in school called Lawn Boy. Do you know what's in here? And I said, yes, ma'am, I do. And she said, what am I supposed to do? And I said, well, I'll tell you what to do. You go to the school board and you read that book for your allotted 3 minutes. She didn't know anything about the school board or how it worked or the impact that had. So I explained it all to her, and she went to the school board. She read the book, and that was one of those first months in Loudoun County that was out there reading. And then they just took flight. And I said, unite with other parents. Read today. They won't believe you. No one would believe that this was actually happening unless you read it to them yourself. But what was really great about that whole kind of, movement there is the media reported on it. And that's the really big thing here. We've been going to school board meetings and talking about this for years, but we didn't have the massive amounts of parents who realized what was actually going on. And then we didn't have the media reporting on it when these moms were having wins in Loudoun County. And those two things together set a grass fire across this country, and moms have just literally mobilized in a mom-led revolution to protect our kids, our freedoms, and our families.
Well, kudos to you for the work you're doing, because I think you've ignited a lot of people to be activists, and not just moms. And of course, I think moms are the tip of the spear here. They're definitely on the front lines and doing the heavy lift. But I've seen so many people get involved, even, programs like mine. I have contemporaries that I grew up with that know that I work in talk radio, and they're just like, oh, yeah, Rich does this thing where he talks about the news or politics. And they've never listened to my show. They could care less about politics. Very apolitical people don't really care about this. However, in recent months, people have come to me, what time is your show on? When can I listen? Do you know what they're doing in my kids' school? And they just start telling me stuff that I've been talking about for a while myself. And I just find that there's a shift. I see a movement amongst parents who were not even interested in having this fight, but they're just like, you know what, this isn't cool. And, I think eventually when you back a parent up, it's instinct, it's whatever it is, I think every parent inherently is going to defend their child the best way they know how to. And as the movements of the left, I'll just, collectively call them the left, move and encroach upon parents, I think parents have no choice but to react to protect their young. Even the people that aren't parents. I mean, there's a group out there called Gays Against Groomers that I've seen making some traction, and I'm thinking, wow, look at that. We've seen even the LGBTQ community with response to the people that were streaking at the White House over the weekend and going topless in the ellipse, putting pressure on those trans individuals for doing that, saying, hey, you're making all of us look bad because of what you did at the White House. So I think there's just, a lot of interesting components to this, and it all started with mom saying enough is enough.
Well, what's really great about this is the guys, the men have always been out there getting involved, getting in elections, at least, voting, and
sure.
A much larger measure than moms. But now we're in the fight too, because I'll tell you a great thing that I saw was during the 2021 election in Virginia, when, moms just mobilized. We were a big part of that and helping get the information out there, mobilize moms, give them their voice. But we have one of our team leads up there in Virginia, lives in Northern Virginia, in Alexandria, across from a couple of neighbors who are very Democrat, liberal leaning. And they had, not only did they support, Democrat candidates like Obama and Hillary Clinton, but they held big fundraisers for them in their homes. Well, my friend is very conservative, but their kids play together. So they figured out a way to work it out. It all works. But what she brought to my attention was, in the 2020 election, these two families that were adamantly Democrat supporting these candidates had Youngkin signs in their front yards, because you don't tell any mama they aren't your kids. And that's what's really going on here. It is a movement that crosses all political barriers, all education backgrounds, races. It doesn't matter, because you do not stand between a mother and her child.
Outstanding. Kimberly Fletcher, president of Moms for America. We're coming right back. I want you to tell us a little bit more about the organization. And if you have a question for her, now's the time. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. Rich Valdez. Let's go to our caller, Steve in Atlanta, Georgia, with a question for Kimberly Fletcher, president of Moms for America. Steve, go right ahead quickly.
So real quick, I took on a guy, he's 31, he's an ex-felon, right? He has a wife, 2 kids, and he's been working on with me for, 2 days now? And he's going to be awesome because he was on track. New career for this guy. I'm really excited about him for him. I met him 2 years ago and told him he needed to be a plumber then.
What's the question for Kimberly Fletcher?
The question for Kim is he and his wife both understand that their 2 kids are being taught the LGBT stuff, and he's really pissed about it. And I was wondering if there's any sort of a resource on the website that does this pod thing for teaching kids at home, where the parents can team up together and create these pods.
All right. Thank you, Steve. Good question. Kimberly?
Yeah. So actually we were I was personally part of putting together Public School Exit. And Public School Exit is a great resource. When one of the tabs on there is, if you want to leave school, what are your options? And it has a plethora of options on there. How do you start a pod? How do you connect? One of the things that we did personally is we connected in Michigan particularly teachers who wanted to teach, with parents who were looking for teachers who wanted to start a pod, who then we were able to connect them with a church that opened their doors to allow them to be able to have schools and classrooms there. So it's the idea and the concepts, are all online, especially at Public School Exit, but you really do it on the local level. And that's what's really exciting about this. Unite together with other parents in your community, and you would be surprised. You already have everything that you need right where you are. And we are happy to provide you with tools, ideas, and resources to get you started.
Kimberly, would you let Steve know what website he should go to? Would that be your website where he could start off?
Yeah, they can come to momsforamerica.us. We have an Empower Moms section, and when you click on that, it tells you everything. If you want to pull your kids out of school, we tell you how to do it safely, effectively, what your options are, how to start some of these pods. If you want to keep your kids in school, how to keep them protected, how to show up at the school board meetings and defend them. If you want to serve on the school board, if you want to run for school board, we provide incredible, exceptional resources and training in all of those areas. So if you're looking to be empowered, come to momsforamerica.us, click on Empower Moms, and that'll get you going.
Thank you, Kim. Steve, great question. Thank you for your call. Godspeed to your new employee. Hope everything works well. Now, Kimberly Fletcher, in the couple of minutes that we have remaining, I'm just curious to know, it seems like you're really steeped in this. You're getting legislative wins. You've ignited parents across the country, moms in particular, to take action. Did you just wake up one day and decide this is what I want to do, or is this years in the making of you being involved in the grassroots efforts?
Oh, I think it's kind of a little of both. So I didn't wake up one day, but there was a wake-up moment. What started my journey was 2001. My husband was stationed at the Pentagon on 9/11. And through a series of miracles, literal miracles, he came home safe that day. And it was a major wake-up call for me. And that was the day that I went from being patriotic to being a patriot. And I started to read and grasp on everything I could get my hands on America's history and heritage, the Constitution, things that I should have learned in school, and I didn't. And for the next 3 years, it was like I was engrossed in everything I could find on America's history and heritage. And then in 2004, I just felt this weight on my heart, like God was calling me to start a national organization. And I'm like, what do I know? I'm just a mom, and my mom was like, well, call it that, and so I just took a leap of faith and I started Moms for America in a living room in Dayton, Ohio with 27 women. Those were our first members. And within about 6 months, we had at least one mom in every state. And I'm like, I have a national membership now. What do I do? And it was a course of over the years developing, looking and seeing what was needed, what was missing, and realizing in 2012 it all comes down to the home, the family, and the moms. And that's when we launched our signature program, the Cottage Meeting Project. And that is what gets moms really excited and engaged. And because we were able to put those programs together when 2020 hit, it was already there and ready for them when they needed it. And that was just a blessing. We call it the quiet years to protect for the time when we needed to really go to battle.
Outstanding work. Well, Kimberly Fletcher, Godspeed to you and the work that you're doing, and as well as the moms that you represent. I thank you for the work that you're doing. And just let everybody know one more time how they could follow you and where they could learn more about Moms for America.
Absolutely. You can come to momsforamerica.us. At the bottom of the website are all our social media channels. So you can connect with us there. momsforamerica.us.
Outstanding. Well, thank you, and I hope to have you back on soon. It was really informative.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right, folks, your calls and more coming up straight ahead, plus additional conversation on what's going on with Bud Light. They seem to be in a spiral. Now people are saying it was a conspiracy from within. They wanted to destroy the brand, and this was the fastest way to do it. Who comes up with this stuff? Anyway, don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. And listen to this. This is the stuff that you find on the internet, right? People magazine It's probably my fault for looking at People magazine, but I'm always interested in seeing, what is considered the big story of the day. Listen to this. Jennifer Lawrence, she's an actress in Hollywood. Her mom sold her used toilet on Craigslist. The star of the new comedy No Hard Feelings reveals that Lee Eisenberg, the writing partner of the movie's director Gene Stupinski, purchased the old commode. So one of the directors of the movie bought her toilet. Now listen, I like memorabilia as much as the next guy. Some of the stuff that I like pieces and parts of radio stations, right? So like if you told me that you had a on-air light from, I don't know, from WIOD when Larry King used to host his show there, I would say, I want it. How much is it? I would try to get my hands on it because I like that type of nostalgia. And being that I came into something that I love, talk radio, and I've gotten an opportunity to be mentored and work with so many great legends and titans in talk radio. I have a few cool pieces of this and that every now and again. But that's the stuff I like. But I can't see somebody saying, hey, I've got L. Rushbo's toilet, or I've got Howard Stern's old bathroom sink. I could not imagine me making a play for one of those. But that's what's going on. Anyway, it turns out the 32-year-old actress who has a little baby now, 16-month-old son, has her own strange story. She says that years ago, Lee Eisenberg bought the toilet on Craigslist from her mom, and now is a big-time Hollywood writer. So the revelation, this is from the article, elicited a whoa from her co-star and joined her for the interview. I got to tell you, the things that get people in Hollywood excited, I don't know. I'm not sold on this. Anyway, straight ahead, we're going to get into some interesting conversation on Bud Light, what the latest with Bud Light is. Plus, I don't know if you've heard about this, but there were some Americans that died at a resort in Mexico. And it turns out they weren't the only ones dying there. Apparently, this place has a record of I guess bad stays, we'll call it, right? And they call it the hangover test. So we're going to get into that a little bit as well. But the topic of Bud Light is an interesting one to me because we've seen, with like we just discussed with Kimberly Fletcher for Moms for America, there's a lot of parents that are really just fed up with what's going on there with lots of things, right? We've seen it at the school board meeting that was in California not too long ago, where the parents got into a fist fight over this stuff because there were these masked LGBTQ people that some are saying were Antifa antagonists, and they certainly looked that way. You've got the Dodger Stadium protest that's going on. There's so much back and forth in the culture wars, and I got to say, I love it. I think it's great when you have somebody pushing one side of the story and then somebody saying, you know what, I don't like your side of the story, so I'm going to push back. And I believe that's what it's about, right? That's really what America is. I'm never going to sit here and say you can't have your free speech, you can't go and protest, you can't go and try to indoctrinate our youth, because obviously they can, right? And they won. The left, the socialists, the communist sympathizers, the most liberal have won, especially on the university campus, right? And that's really where I mean, like where they've won. They've taken that battlefield and they've won that one. Doesn't mean they've won the war. That's why the rest of us are here, to have these conversations and figure out what our next step is going to be to maintain tradition, protect our families, protect our children, that type of thing. So my friend, she's a fashion model and a radio host in New York City, Xen Sams. She's joining me next, and we're going to have an excellent conversation. So don't go anywhere. There's more to come straight ahead.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. And if you want to join our national late-night town hall conversation, feel free to do so. Our number's 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ. Of course, we continue to see what's going on with people revolting against the decision by the Dodgers in California to host and honor the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. Now, of course, this is a group of drag queens posing as nuns, and the Dodgers have elected to host them as part of their Pride Month celebration, and they're honoring them as, I forget exactly what they were honoring them, like some sort of community hero type of award. And of course, thousands of people have joined the protest against that, saying, we don't enjoy this. This is not good. And Karine Jean-Pierre, the White House press secretary, she's also chimed in on the culture wars. Here's what she had to say.
There's a lot of things that are happening in this country. A lot of things. There's a lot of things that are happening in this country. A lot of things. It is unprecedented. It is scary. We're in Pride Month, where the LGBTQ plus community is literally under attack. Literally.
Now, while they're not literally under attack, and Karine Jean-Pierre, that was pretty scary, there's a lot of things. She just sounded really off today. But they're not under attack. But I think traditional values are under attack. And you've got a teacher in San Francisco who was suspended for targeting white male students because of certain music that she played in the classroom. We'll get to that a little bit later. But what comes to mind for me is the good old clash of the people versus Bud Light, right? And now a former Anheuser-Busch executive is saying that Bud Light, the backlash isn't going away. Their sales have now dropped for a fifth week in a row. This former executive is warning that the Bud Light backlash is probably going to be a fixture for the near future because they're still not making money. Saying this, consumers feel like they're having an impact, and every single week the sales numbers are being reported, and they're getting worse and worse every single week. So I see this continuing to drag on until Bud Light makes a comment about what they stand for and what customers they're trying to serve. And that's former Anheuser-Busch executive Anson Frericks, like Fredericks without a D, Frericks. And he said that on the Fox News channel. So I want to get into the culture wars and what's going on with Bud Light and everything in between with my good friend Xen Sams. She's a model and a radio host, and she does lots of amazing work in New York City. Check out her show. It's called A Moment of Zen. Xen Sams, welcome.
Hey, Rich. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. Always happy to have you on the program. So tell me, what are your thoughts on this Bud Light stuff? Do you think that this is a flash in the pan and eventually people are going to get over it? Do you think people are going to continue to boycott Bud Light? I can tell you, for me, I was recently at a talk radio conference, and they had a bucket of Bud Light and a bucket of some other brand. And there were a group of guys, and they were like, psst, psst, come here. So I walked over to them, and they were like, we're taking bets on who's going to be the first one to grab the Bud Light. So I stood there like in a circle with these guys watching that bucket for a couple of minutes, and nobody touched the Bud Light. So it seems that the boycott is still running strong.
In full force.
Sams. Yeah.
It's in full force. The boycott is in full force. They are not going to back down. And by the way, who drinks Budweiser? Who drinks Bud Light? Men. And for them to have a transgender ambassador sell their products is either they're complete idiots at hand. They need to, redo their marketing campaign, or this was intentional, because all of this drama over Dylan Mulvaney and an American lager. This is what we're talking about. The last 2 weeks, Americans have worked themselves into a tizzy over this Anheuser-Busch marketing campaign featuring, Dylan Mulvaney. And we're going to get into who he is in just a minute, but he promoted the company's Easy Carry contest on social media. To reiterate, a company put a trans woman in a marketing campaign, and things immediately escalated to the point of Kid Rock destroying cases of watery beer with an AR-15. Jesus Lord, Rich, what a time to be alive. So if you're not a regular TikTok user, you may not even know who Dylan Mulvaney is at this point in America. I hope you do. But since March of last year, Dylan was an actor who theater gaze may have seen previously in the touring production of the Book of Mormon. And now Dylan obviously has been documenting her transition in the last year in this video diary series titled Days of Girlhood, right? And it's a ridiculous slogan because Dylan is 26 years old and discusses the frustrations and surprises of her second puberty to an audience of millions. This is not puberty. You are 26 years old, Dylan. And so if you look at what this is about, now let's talk about the collaboration, because you would have to think that...
Well, before we get into that, Xen, I just want to jump in and say part of the backlash I feel with Dylan Mulvaney in particular is the fact that he's 26 or she is posing as a teenage girl. Right. It's not just like, hey, I identify as a woman and I'm 26. It's I identify as like a teen girl. And I think a lot of people have taken exception to this, being that he's a 26-year-old biological male.
Correct. This is nuts. This goes beyond comprehension. And this is the ridicule behind it. Because when Anheuser-Busch partnered with Mulvaney, they wanted to boost their what they called the Easy Carry contest. And they were offering customers a chance at $15,000 for uploading videos of them carrying as many cans of beer as possible. And to promote the contest, Dylan uploaded a sponsored video in which she appears in an Audrey Hepburn getup and goofs on March Madness. And then the company released a special line of Pride-themed cans with various pronouns to coincide with Pride Week. Now, to sweeten the pot, Rich, and celebrate the 1-year anniversary of Mulvaney's transition, they also sent Mulvaney a special can of Bud Light featuring her face and a message on the top of the can reading, "Cheers to 365 days of being a woman," referencing Mulvaney in her Days of Girlhood series. Again, Days of Girlhood series. So the conspiracy theories are now starting to pour in to your headline. So the partnership, which is extremely controversial, is now touted as being a strategic attempt to permanently alter the brand's audience. And this is according to an anonymous former employee. So Budweiser, let's go back. They came under fire in April after the post that Mulvaney's Instagram account was tagged in, featuring, the personalized Bud Light can. Now, the backlash in response to partnering with Dylan led to a massive slump in sales, like massive, like historical. And the company's CEO insisted, and this is the key part, that it never intended to be part of a discussion that divides people. Now, this is what this ex-Anheuser-Busch worker suggested the move was intentional. He says, what are you talking about? What do you mean it was never intended to be part of a discussion that divides people? This is the entire campaign. So they're saying it was a strategic attempt to permanently alter the brand's audience. Now, one would say, why? Why would you want to lose millions and millions of dollars? Well, I'll tell you why. So here's the bottom line. The whistleblower remarked that many of them knew exactly what was going to happen. It was a strategic destruction of Bud Light. Now, again, this is what he's saying. When they bought over let's go back. They were bought over by InBev. So Anheuser-Busch was bought over by InBev. And a lot of things changed from when it was owned by Anheuser-Busch, because Anheuser-Busch really had it as an American brand. Now, he explained that the company previously offered many benefits prior to its purchase by InBev. And through the fall in sales for the Bud Light brand, the former employee stated, again, this is what he's saying, that the corporation could restructure both employee benefits and its company standards through layoffs and renegotiating contracts. So this guy is coming out and he's saying that this is intentional. This was a self-smear campaign to plummet the company so they could basically restructure, lay off, and recontract the contracts that they have under InBev, not under Anheuser-Busch. Now, this is a very far stretch, but this is what is trending right now. I would have to believe that this could actually be accurate, because you would have to be an idiot to put Dylan Mulvaney as the face of Anheuser-Busch's Bud Light.
Yeah, you know, and Xen Sams, I think sometimes, just like in politics, every now and again, you have something that happens that's unfortunate, and you can either try to quickly recover, or you can say, let's see how we can make this worse, you know, or as the former chief of staff at the White House to Obama said, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I could see how a very savvy business leader could say, hey, look, we're losing money on this. This might be exactly what we need to lay off thousands of people and go in there. The brand wasn't doing that great to begin with, so we could blame it on Dylan Mulvaney and the culture wars and end up, you know, renegotiating and doing what we do. And maybe we rebrand Bud Light with a new, at the end of the day, it's just a new brand. I don't know if that makes sense to me, but I see how it could make sense if you know the numbers. I would have thought Bud Light was, you know, probably America's best-selling beer, and I think it was up until this happened, and now it's been replaced by Modelo. So that part of it makes me think that this is more damage control and them saying, all right, we screwed up. We had no idea this was going to be so bad with Dylan Mulvaney, but now that we're screwed so badly, we might as well figure out how to, you know, make this work for us by firing a lot of people.
I agree. I think that's what's up. And it's so sad because they played with fire and they got burned. That's the bottom line. America doesn't want to see this. America doesn't want to see transgender ideologies pushed upon a population. They just don't want it. They don't want it pushed on the kids. They don't want it pushed on religious groups. They don't want it pushed on men who drink beer. They just want real good, you know, fun times at a party. Drink a can of beer. We don't want a face associated to. Budweiser never had faces associated to. Sure, they had models. Sure, they had good-looking women in campaigns. But what brand has not had that? So to then go and do something so polarizing, to stick a transgender person's face on, who I bet you Dylan Mulvaney doesn't even drink beer. I bet you he drinks fancy cocktails with umbrellas in them.
That's funny. And, you know, I'm thinking if Starbucks were to do this, it probably would have went over a lot better. But I think just Bud Light 100%. Was the wrong product. Folks, we're on with Xen Sams. She's a radio host out of New York. She's the host of A Moment of Zen. You got to check out her program. It's a really good one. And we're going to continue our conversation because there were some people streaking at the White House. All right, maybe they were just going topless on the ellipse at the White House, but bad enough. And they've been under fire ever since, now issuing a full apology. They're saying, you know, sorry for doing what we did. Now, we played a little bit of that apology yesterday, but it seems like pressure is continuing to mount against folks that are really upset with what Rose Montoya and others did at the Pride celebration at the White House. We're going to discuss that straight ahead, as well as a couple other topics with our guest, Xen Sams. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to take this moment to apologize for the impact of my actions. I especially want to apologize to my Black trans brothers and siblings, especially transgender women who are Black, because I understand that you all are constantly, at a disproportionate level, impacted by the actions of others, and especially by anti-trans violence. I would also like to apologize to my family and friends who have been harassed. I would also like to apologize to my own community, the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, And last but not least, I would like to apologize to the president, the White House, and the nation. It was also never my intention to create a situation that would lead to harassment and harm of myself and others, nor for trans joy, like my little moment of trans joy, to be weaponized by vile people of the opposition.
That's trans influencer Rose Montoya saying, again, sorry that for the topless pictorial debut that was made at the White House. And, I'm glad that even folks in the trans and LGBT communities are coming after Rose Montoya for doing that, because you've got to be out of your mind. It doesn't matter what it is that you stand for. You don't go to the White House and start streaking, in my opinion. Xen Sams is the host of A Moment of Zen. Xen Sams, what do you make of all this?
Yeah, you definitely don't go to the White House streaking. Bad judgment call there. And no one liked it. And America uproared. And the White House agreed that this was not appropriate. So, the more we allow this behavior to take place, the more that we will see the stupidity underlying the behavior. So if it plays out the way it keeps playing out, America will realize on their own that this is not normal nor acceptable. And at some point, somebody's going to say enough is enough, just the same way that the White House did. It takes a lot for the White House to cave to right-wing pressure. And you wouldn't think that it's just right-wing pressure. They caved to universal pressure. Right. Montoya uses she, they pronouns. Again, she was invited to the White House's Pride celebration. The fact that the White House is even having a Pride celebration, that aside, she was invited there. That was her moment. But to take a moment like that and to just destroy everything that you could have going for you as a transgender, she, they, woman, whatever you want to call yourself, you just proved America's own fact that this is actually insanity. So she came out and she said, or he came out and he said, I don't even know what's correct anymore, Rich. I'm so confused. But they said, why is my chest now deemed inappropriate or illegal when I show it off? However, before coming out as a trans, it was not, they said. So all we're doing, America, is affirming that I, Rose Montoya, I am a woman. And all you're doing is saying that trans women are women because for some reason, people like to sexualize women's bodies and say that they are inappropriate. This is what Montoya was quoted saying. Like, even the fact that you're putting these quotes out as a woman is mind-boggling to me, because a woman wouldn't put these quotes out.
I don't believe that this is about a woman being topless. I think this is just about being topless, period. I don't care if you're Channing Tatum or Dwayne The Rock Johnson or Rose Montoya. I just don't think you should be shirtless at the White House. And I think that's part of the issue and the way it was done. Zen, the music means they're kicking us both out of here, but let everybody know how they could listen to your show.
Definitely check us out. Saturday nights, 9 to 10 p.m. on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio.
All right, folks, that's Xen Sams. Give her a follow at Xen Sams. Zen, thanks for being with us, folks. More to come straight ahead. A conversation on depression, mental illness, and the uptick on children that are going into therapy. Don't miss that. Coming up next.
Valdez. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. And listen to this headline. It's a study that just came out. Pornography consumption is linked to serious health issues for men. They suggest that they might be more susceptible to eating disorders. I'd never heard of such a thing. I didn't even know guys got eating disorders. But we'll get into that in a moment. The story I want to get to right now is that 15% of U.S. children recently received mental health treatment, and that's an uptick that the CDC is reporting. And my question with respect to this is this a good thing or a bad thing? Like, so do we look at it and say, oh my gosh, all of our kids are seeking therapy for mental health? Or do we say, thank God, mental health issues are being addressed by all of these teens that need the help and they're getting it? I don't know the answer, but psychotherapist Jill Robin Payne, she's an author and a speaker and a frequent guest here, hopefully has the answer for us. Jill Robin Payne, welcome back.
Oh, thanks, Rich, for having me.
So tell us, your take on this, because I don't know how to take it. I look at this and I say, wow, I know this comes on the heels of the CDC's big report that they issued earlier in the year where they said that mainly like teen girls were in I'm going to use the words horrible shape when it came to mental health, and they were suffering from depression and anxiety and all these things. And I've seen it. I have 2 teen girls, and I've seen their friends, and I've just seen how life affects all of them. But when I look at all of this, I think, I would hope that they're getting the help that they want. And I don't know if this 15% figure is scary, like, oh my gosh, what happened to the other 85%? Or is it, thank God that there's 15% that are getting the treatment that they need? What say you?
Well, so 15% of the kids are getting treatment for their mental health disorders. There is an increase. They've even done studies, and in that article it was saying that they have an increase in anxiety disorders. And a lot of these people are not getting help because of some barriers. The stigma, depending on what culture you are, Hispanic, Asian, Black, tend to not think therapy is a good thing. So there's a higher percentage of whites that come and get therapy. Also, right now, there's not even enough pediatric professionals. So, and then there's also a money thing. So 15% that are getting it, there really needs to even be more people that are in need of it. So I'm going to say that it's a negative, and there is an uptick in, as you were saying, your young girls. It used to be for suicide, it used to be that the boys would commit suicide and girls would attempt it. Now they're almost the same in percentage of boys and girls committing suicide. So it's an uptick in depression, and a lot of this is because it's a disconnect where if you're doing this internet, whether it's social media, whether it's screen time. Matter of fact, I was going to say that this has been going on so long. In 2015, a University of Houston here in Houston, they did a study and they came up with something called Facebook depression because people were comparing themselves to other people on Facebook and getting depressed. And then last year, there was something called back to school necklace that I talked about on the news, and that was a slang term for a noose, meaning suicide by hanging, because they were going back to school last fall. So this has been going on a long time. I'm glad that there are kids getting treatment. There are so many out there, though, that need it. And and the parents they're taking the blunt of it because it's up to them to watch and see how their kids are. Is there any change in their behavior? What's going on at school? As you noticed during COVID, parents were finding out what was really being taught there, and also that their kids weren't really learning. So a lot is going on. And it's sort of a domino effect. It was happening before COVID. COVID sort of exacerbated it. And I'm glad we're recognizing it. I think this is something that we need to recognize because our kids are communicating a different way than we did when we grew up. And so the way we did was I said hi to you. I looked at you eye to eye. I shook your hand. I might have given you a hug. Now they go online and they're constantly texting and getting this dopamine hit, a dopamine loop, but never getting satisfied, sort of like having sex but never climaxing. And so it's sort of, there's a lot of unfinished business. So that's my take on it. I do feel that there's some positives because when you are doing social media, it does keep you connected in a way. We just need to have a balance. And they've already done studies on too much screen time, and that includes TV. It's just not healthy for you. Too much eating, too much sex. We just need to have a balance.
All right. Now, Jill Robin Payne, psychotherapist extraordinaire, thank you for that explanation. And I want to delve, I'm going to get on your couch here and kick my feet up.
Okay.
Because I feel like there's, you mentioned something that I think is very real. But I think it goes beyond stigma, right? I think people use this term stigma, and I don't think it's really stigma as much as people think it is. I really think it's ignorance. I think there's a lot of people that, and I can only tell you this as someone that I've had ADHD my entire life. I didn't know I had it until my 30s. So until I was in my 30s, early 30s, I really thought there was something wrong with me. Now I know something is wrong with me, but I know exactly what it is. And it's fascinating to me because as an adult, I see it, and now I've met other people, and they're like, oh yeah, isn't it crazy when people look at you, and the idea of telling someone that, and I think a lot of it, and just again using my own example with ADHD, I think the name is even poorly associated with how this thing works. Some researchers say they should call it an executive function deficiency. Where that would make more sense. And it does make more sense.
Yeah.
It's like, go left, go left, go left. I hear it. I don't do it. I go right. Right. So then I go right. And people are like, what does that have to do with shaking your leg or being, hyperactive? And they don't realize all of and I think that's what it is. When people don't understand, and I'm talking about one particular issue, imagine, all these other issues that people have. So I think when people don't understand how the mind works, it becomes very difficult for them because for so many people, it's, hey, listen, this is mind over matter. You're just making excuses. You're just being lazy. You're just this and you're just that. And for many people, they end up saying, well, no. You're just, you're playing the victim. You're just, you're not taking accountability. You're not being whatever. And I could see somebody saying these things to these kids when they're like, oh, I feel depressed. I know what my dad would tell me, depressed. You don't know what depressed is when you grow up in a house with 12 siblings. That would be my dad's response to that. And I get it because what does he know about that? He has no idea what mental illness is and how it affects people. So I think, there might be a degree of this that's overplayed, but I think the majority of it is underrepresented or undernoticed even by people because they don't regard it the same way. And rather than stigma, I just think it's ignorance. Do you think I'm onto something, or am I just making stuff up?
I think you're onto something because if people don't see it, they can't really understand it. It's just like God or something that is not, you can't really see it. And so think about it. If someone saw a person and their hand was cut off and they were bleeding, you would run right to them. If somebody was majorly depressed, you don't see it. Now, sometimes you see it with their stance, the way they talk. A lot of times they hide it. And that's one of the issues also with these young kids is some of them will talk about being hopeless, but they don't really let you know that they're suicidal. So you don't see it, so therefore there's nothing going on. And you don't see it, so then you don't understand it. So ignorance, I can go with that.
All right. Well, we'll continue this.
I'm agreeing.
Thank you. We're going to continue this conversation and a couple of other things I want to add to this mix with Jill Robin Payne. She's our guest, and we're coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with Jill Robin Payne. She's a psychotherapist and the author of Bempathy. Make sure you check out that book and visit her website. Listen to this. Pornography consumption is linked to serious health issues for men, according to a new study. The study was conducted by Max Stern, who's with Yezreel Valley College, along with researchers from the University of Haifa in Israel. And 705 men participated in the study, ages 18 to 68. Average age was 32. And roughly 68% of the men stated that they were heterosexual, with the rest identifying as a sexual minority group. Now, given all of that, there's a bunch of interesting takeaways here, not the least of which is the one that the headline mentions, that there's various health concerns that are coming out of the study, including eating disorders amongst men who are frequenters of pornography. And in one section of this, it mentions men who are frequenters of problematic pornography, which I don't even know how that's defined. Jill Robin Payne, welcome back. What insight can you shed on this with respect to problematic pornography? Because I don't even know what that is.
Well, I read it real quick, and what I got from it is it's similar to what women go through on social media, comparing their bodies to these beautiful women, and therefore then getting upset and anxious, creating more anxiety, maybe getting them a little depressed, and therefore they want to numb their pain, so then they might go to food. So that's what I'm seeing here, is they're doing it to numb their pain, but what I'm reading is they're comparing, and I've talked about this to clients before, and it sounds sort of weird when they're watching porn. The man sort of becomes the man. He puts himself, he looks at the man who's having sex with the woman, and he relates with the man.
Living vicariously through the character in the film.
There you go. Exactly. So if he's doing that and then he's comparing his body to that man, and the man is bigger than he is, or, you know, more well endowed, then and slimmer and having ripples in his stomach, then therefore he's going to feel not as good about himself, and it'll increase anxiety. That's what I'm getting out of it.
Yeah, and I find the whole thing interesting because, I mean, I get it on that level. I get it on a lot of levels. The part I didn't, I really didn't see the correlation was with the eating disorders or overeating or whatever it was. But the way you've presented it, it kind of makes sense there. And I think that's, you know, honestly, to me, that seems like a blanket, right? For many issues, people drink themselves into drunken oblivion to get away from their pain because they like being drunk. And when you're drunk, you're happier, you feel numb, and things are better. People eat or overeat because the dopamine rush, and they like, you know, some people like me, I like eating. I enjoy food. And, you know, that's a real thing.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, and when you do eat certain foods, it increases your serotonin, you feel good, and then you want to eat those same foods again. So when people are stressed, they will crave things like carbs, and not the best carbs. And so it makes you feel good because it's a chemical. It releases serotonin, you feel much better, then you get a downer, and then you want to do it again. So anything that affects our pleasure system, we can get addicted to it or dependent on it. So it just depends on your genetics. And so that's what happens when you like to eat. You feel good.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking as you were saying that, two things came to mind. The first one was, my mom was a terrific cook, and she's gone to be with the Lord many years ago. But whenever I smell or taste a dish that tastes the way she used to season things, typically in a Puerto Rican restaurant, or if I go to some Puerto Ricans' homes that cook similarly, I get very happy. I'm like, oh my gosh, this tastes just like the roast pork my mom used to make. And it's not because I'm stressed. It's not because of anything. It just makes me feel good. It's kind of like a comfort of yesteryear, or a home cooked meal that reminds me of my mom. And I obviously I don't have access to that. It's hard to find that on a regular basis. But I could see somebody who could relate to that in a way, saying, when they're having a bad day, go, yeah, I need to have that. I don't think it's accessible to everybody, but it seems like that's what they're describing. And I think that is not necessarily linked to pornography per se, but just to people who want to enjoy the comforts of food.
So the study really didn't go into the type of men, what kind of disorders they had, their background, all these things you need to take into consideration when you're doing a study. And so, they could have a lot of anxiety and then when they're doing the porn is to relieve stress. And so therefore, when you're eating, just like you said, that also reduces stress. So it sort of coincides. They're very similar.
All right.
And if
Jill
you think
Robin Payne.
about it, I was going to say, if you think about it, when you're having sex, you like to eat that person. So, I don't mean to get
That's all right. It's
so
late
it
night.
is-
We'll allow it.
But it is sort of this similar if you think about it.
Interesting. Folks, we're on with Jill Robin Payne. She is a psychotherapist and the author of Bempathy. And we're coming right back with her. And something you mentioned, Jill Robin Payne, that about this people that are just happy to consume more and more of what pleasures them. And it reminds me of something I read just yesterday, and we shared on the program, but I'd like to get your take on it. So we'll do that straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, America, welcome back. We're on with psychotherapist extraordinaire, as I like to call her, Jill Robin Payne. She's the author of Bempathy. And Jill Robin Payne, tell us a little bit about the book.
Oh, about Bempathy? I've developed it. Well, I've been developing it for the 30 years that I've been doing my therapy because I banter with empathy with my clients. And so then I just decided to call it something, and we call it Bempathy. And it has 6 elements. It helps people to communicate and gets them to get over conflicts so that they don't run away or ghost you. So it helps you to communicate, to find connectiveness, and feel safe and more in control. So that's pretty much it.
If somebody wanted to get a copy or 3 copies of this book, where would they go?
They would go to Amazon, and it's there. And I would love it if after they finish it, they give me a buzz and ask me questions.
And leave a great review. And also, if people wanted to say, you know what, I love this Jill Robin Payne. She's terrific. I want to go to her office and put my feet up on her couch and tell her all my problems. Is there a website? How do they find you?
So go to jillrobinpayne.com or bempathize.com, and there will be an email, and they can get in touch with me.
And spell out Payne just so everybody makes sure they don't misspell it when they go to jillrobinpayne.com.
Right. I know they might do P-A-I-N. P-A-Y-N-E.
All right. That's Jill Robin Payne, Payne with a Y. Jill Robin Payne, thank you for being with us. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure.
Thanks, Rich. Bye.
You bet. Have a great weekend. All right, folks, there's more to come straight ahead with your calls. It's Open Phone America. I'm looking forward to speaking with everybody. 833, the number 4, Valdez. 833-4-VALDEZ. We'll be right back.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, Here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, your liberty-loving Latino amigo. Happy to have a conversation with you tonight. 833-4-VALDEZ is the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ, if you want to join our late-night national town hall forum. And President Biden is the butt of jokes tonight because, of course, he made a gaffe. Now, this man has been a gaffe machine his entire career, but this one is really interesting given that this woman has already gone to be with the Lord. We're talking about the Queen, but Joe Biden referenced the Queen, ending his speech saying, God save the Queen. Listen to this.
And it's the least consequential part of this whole meeting for you, I promise. All right? God save the Queen, man.
That's Joe Biden. God save the Queen, man. Now, listen, I don't know where that came from. Nobody does. That's why it's being reported in the news, right? It wasn't like it was a speech on the Queen. It was very unexpected. He was talking about gun control, right? Friday night saying, God save the Queen, man. And this came after he warned the audience they could be liable for the actions of people who steal their cars. The 80-year-old president's sign-off confused listeners, including journalists in the room at the University of Hartford in Connecticut. Now, he went on to say, several of you, I'm sorry, not him, but one of the quotes I'm reading here says, several of you have asked me why he might have said that. And Todd Gilman answered, I have no idea. Is the answer that he gave. Deputy Press Secretary Olivia Dalton told reporters that Biden was commenting to someone in the crowd without further clarification. So, of course, somebody mentioned the Queen, and he said, of course, God save the Queen, man. Oh, boy, I tell you, Joe El Baboso Biden, he's always so interesting. Then, of course, we have Barack Obama. Barack Obama always has something interesting to say as well. But that's just how that is. And, you know, I'm going to get into Obama in a moment. But I want to remind you, our phones are available, 833-4-VALDEZ. And I don't want to leave people holding too long. So before I go being a chatterbox, let me check in with some of our listeners. Let's go to John in Vero Beach, Florida, listening on WTTB. John, welcome.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to listen to the man that has such there's no grass growing on a busy street. The underside of that has a tremendous, fantastic, productive brain power.
Well, thank you, sir.
You're a wonderful guy. I just wanted to make a comment with regards to, you're quite welcome, that wonderful lady you had on there, Miss Payne, Payne.
Oh, yes.
And,
Jill Robin Payne.
It's probably a doctor. I'm not sure. But anyway, I have a comment to make with regards to a lot of veterans. When you go to boot camp, it's drummed into you. You know, you just follow orders, never complain, never whine. So when you get out of the military, you think mentally you're not standing down. You're still a soldier at heart. So you don't want to ever say anything to anybody and anything that's bothering you because you think you'd be less than a good soldier. You think you'd be a whiner, but it's not. Yeah.
Right.
So
that's a great point. You leave the military, you've been trained to continue to move forward, to adapt, improvise, and overcome. And now you're a civilian and you have issues and you're still thinking like a soldier when you should be thinking like a civilian. I get it, John.
Yeah. Yeah. At night, I would get these terrible nightmares of the blood and guts, and I would wake up and quietly slip out of bed and go out to my garage and work on another classic car until I was ready to drop. And then when I felt like I was get all that blood and guts out of my mind, I would slip quietly back into bed and nobody'd be the wiser. You know, I had different ways of hiding it. And but my wonderful psychiatrist, Dr. Hune, oh my God, Dr. Petro, Dr. Schwartz, Dr. Campazano. If it weren't for them, I wouldn't even be here. Those wonderful psychiatrists.
So you were able to overcome that and figured out that working on the classic car till you're falling on your face wasn't the right thing to do. And, you know, I've done stuff like that as well. I've realized there's nothing comparable to serving on a battlefield or anything like that. But when I've had issues and things are in my head, I find anything in the world I can do until literally I'm like dropping whatever's in my hand, falling asleep, literally falling. And I'm like, okay, now it's time. Now I can go to bed. And it's a horrible thing when you can't fall asleep.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to say God bless her and all those who help other people with their thoughts. They don't give you the answers. They help you to find the answers.
Yeah, and that's the real gift. You're right, John. Thank you for your call. I do appreciate it. And thanks for your service and for your call. John in Vero Beach, Florida, WTTB. Big shout out to everybody out in Florida calling in. Again, the phone number is 833-4-VALDEZ. Now, I also, we have more calls coming in, but I wanted to just cover something on Barack Obama because he was recently on David Axelrod's podcast called The Axe Files, and he had a lot to say, and maybe I'll play a few of these cuts, but right now I want to play Obama cut number 7, saying that race has always been a fault line in American politics. Listen to this.
Suggestions that I might be trying to impose Sharia law. I don't know if that works if it's Joe Biden at the time.
Yeah.
Rather,
I don't remember that meeting actually.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Right. So I don't think that there's any doubt that race has always been the fault line in American politics, society, and culture. It was the first and the most powerful, the most elemental. The idea that would no longer be the case once I was president was foolish, right? I mean, change takes time, and there was going to be some pushback. And look, by the way, it reflected a real reality, right? If you look at third graders in the United States, the demographic there is really different than folks our age. Yeah. And so the country is becoming much more diverse, much browner. And, that's going to be scary for folks who feel as if that means something's being taken away from me.
Now, Obama is good at this stuff, right? If we take, this is, 5 sentences, maybe 4. It's a short paragraph, what he says here. But he says so much. He starts off saying that race has always been the fault line in American politics. Now, I disagree with that. I don't think that race is the fault line in American politics, and it has always been. I think that race was an afterthought for many people up until we elected the first black president. And then all of a sudden, race was right in the forefront of everything for the next 8 years, and again, the subsequent years, and it hasn't gone away since. Right? It seems like we focus more on race today than we ever have at any other point in my lifetime. Now, again, I might be younger than some of you who might have lived through Jim Crow and all that, but you're talking to somebody that wasn't alive for Jim Crow. So, again, being born in the late 70s, I never had these big conversations on race, other than the riots that occurred in Brooklyn, New York, in Crown Heights. That was the big race riot of my time and Rodney King. Outside of that, and they were isolated incidents, and I'm never going to be the person that says racism doesn't exist. I mean, that's like saying, no, murder doesn't exist, or, child abuse doesn't exist. Yeah, bad stuff will always exist. But the idea that it's all over the place and that it's a regular thing, I would push back on that. And listen, I see racism, and I get it, even veiled and thinly veiled attempts. I mean, just today or yesterday, somebody was commenting. Over the weekend, I marched with the Guardian Angels in New York City in the New York City. It's actually called the National Puerto Rican Day Parade, and it's on 5th Avenue in New York City. It happens every year, and this bothered someone. I'm guessing a listener of mine, because he follows me on social media, and his comment was, again, a thinly veiled comment. All he wrote was, "In America, we fly Old Glory." Now, it's interesting because nobody's holding a flag in the photo that I posted of me, Curtis Sliwa, my buddy. Nobody, right? Somebody behind us was waving a Puerto Rican flag, as were, a million other people. And the buildings behind us had American flags on them. But I just found it fascinating that, in life, if you have nothing nice to say, you say nothing at all. But again, you have free speech rights. And, I say a lot of things that are not nice sometimes. So I don't discourage you from doing that. But I try to use that rule of thumb for myself. But I asked him in the comments on the social media post, what was the point of this comment? In America, we fly Old Glory. Well, of course we do. But what does that have to do with my post about, saying hello to everybody at the Puerto Rican parade? So somebody else chimes in and explains to him that, the Puerto Ricans in question here are, Americans, and that Puerto Rico's a national territory. And his response to that person, not to me, never wrote back to me, but his response to the other person was, Puerto Rico's not even a state. We should be flying Old Glory. And I'm so lost here. And I'm thinking, I questioned him again, saying, do we have this conversation on St. Patrick's Day when there are Irish flags and American flags with green lines through them and all sorts of things and shamrocks all over the place as we celebrate? And that's just one cultural celebration that I could think of. But having been to that parade many times in New York City, it was one that came to mind. And of course, the obvious answer is no. Right, because it's a celebration of that culture and the contribution that Americans of Irish descent have made to the country, et cetera, et cetera. And how appropriate or inappropriate would it be for someone who posts a picture at the St. Patrick's Day parade to write, "It's America, we fly Old Glory"? I don't get it. I mean, Old Glory was flying, and people also had the Puerto Rican flag. And the point of the whole story is to show you that there are people, like Obama's saying, there are some people that feel that something's being taken away from them and that somehow the celebration of another culture or ethnicity is somehow an attack on your culture or ethnicity or on the country as a whole. And it's not, and it's never been, right? These are one's own insecurities, one's own ill-held notions and feelings towards certain groups. And again, that doesn't mean all people. That means some people, like this guy, who couldn't think of another way to take a shot at me than to say it's America. It's like the people, if they hear you speaking Spanish, it's America, speak English. Bro, you could speak English. I speak English all day. I get paid to speak English on a big radio show. I could speak Spanish, too. I speak Portuguese, too. I mean, people speak lots of different languages. And I know it gets people mad when I use some Spanish terms on this program, and that's why I do it. I like to get those that it gets mad. I like to ruffle their feathers a little bit. And the rest of you, I like to share a little bit of my culture and my upbringing. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because I'm not agreeing with Obama here. I'm trying to point out how he does what he does. And ultimately, he ties in something that makes some sense with something that makes no sense at all. So when he says that race has been the fault line of American politics, no, sir. It has not been the fault line of American politics. I would submit to you that it's liberty that has always been the fault line here, and that when liberty is encroached upon, that's when we have a problem, Houston. When you don't have free speech rights or this right or that right or any of your First Amendment rights, this is when things go bad. So he's making this case that because the country is more diverse and what he says much browner, this scares people. It does scare some people, but it doesn't scare the majority. The majority of Americans are wonderful people that don't hate you because you speak anything. They don't hate you because of your skin color. They love you just because you're people and you're Americans, and most Americans are good people. And when Obama does this type of demagoguery, trying to pigeonhole people and use this fear-mongering, I have to call him out on it. I've got another clip from Obama, and we're going to get to that straight ahead. Plus your calls, 833-4-VALDEZ, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
Now, before I continue my analysis and dissection on Barack Obama and his commentary, I want to go to our buddy Frank in Evergreen, Montana. He's calling us from the land of KOFI. Frank, go right ahead, sir.
Hi, Rich. I do like your summary of Obama. You really hit it well.
Thank you.
I'll let you continue later on the subject. You do it fine. Anyway, we were talking last night about transgenderism and toilets and, and the rights to have liberty and safety in bathrooms. But in Montana, we've got little places, little towns with no septic systems. You go into a little tavern and take a pee or whatever. You look down and you're looking at a creek running underneath that toilet, and you can see light shining through, and it's wow. That's flowing into rivers, and then there's mining tailings too, and then some of these are like around Yellowstone, and around where they're doing that filming and everything. It's Jefferson County, and my gosh, all that goes into the North Creek of the Yellowstone River, and then other cities too. There's pesticides, herbicides, and along with the Missouri River, and it all flows up by North Dakota, up there in the northeast corner of Montana, and then flows back down towards St. Louis, where they make the beer. And my gosh, it's we are what we eat and we drink, but I won't drink St. Louis beer. What I've seen. Anyway.
Frank, you bring up a really interesting point that a lot of the mom and pop places that you mentioned in Montana have, just these smaller bathrooms. And I'm going on a little bit of a tangent from what you were talking about, but interesting point that like on other issues where people want to have these multi-gender bathrooms, sometimes you can only have one bathroom, which is what I was thinking when you were saying that. And with respect to the environment, you're right. These environmental, at least from what I'm gathering from what you're saying, these environmental issues, they tend to forget about the little guys sometimes and realize that the issues that they're create issues far and wide beyond these big cities like Los Angeles and New York, where they like to promote and test their theories. So thank you for your call, Frank. I appreciate it. More to come straight ahead. Your calls and more. 833-4-VALDEZ.
That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
See what's happening there. We do see businesses moving out for various reasons, but some of them saying they're concerned about the crime in the area. When you see that happening to your beloved city, what goes through your mind, and do you think something's going wrong there?
No, I think they're struggling to recover from the pandemic. They're struggling to come back. They're struggling with the macroeconomic shifts, particularly as it relates to telework, as it relates to what's the future of a downtown. Is it stacking of offices or stacking of people? And they're in the process of rezoning and rebirth and reimagination. By the way, I've seen that in San Francisco for decades.
All right, so which one is it? If you've seen it for decades, Governor Newsom, then it's a problem specific to San Francisco. If it's not rebounding from the pandemic, then why is it unique to San Francisco? I mean, yes, there are a lot of companies that didn't rebound from the pandemic, but we're seeing people back at work in New York City. You're seeing people back in all these other big cities across America. Why not San Francisco? Why is it that the folks from Good Morning America find it so difficult to give a news report and then have to add the caveat that they're afraid of going to San Francisco because things are so bad in San Francisco? Let's see if we have that audio from Good Morning America where they highlight the fact that they're reporting on San Francisco, but it's too unsafe to even be there. Listen to this.
The mayor noting that several metrics of crime are actually flat or down, but it is worth mentioning that we are not at Union Square or the Westfield Mall this morning because we have been advised it is simply too dangerous to be there at this hour.
So it's clear that there's issues with respect to what's happening in San Francisco. And I've got a story I'm going to share with you about what one teacher was doing. And this is the real problem, right? It's that these woke, crazy politicians and the woke, crazy lefties that occupy these areas are making it uninhabitable. Everything is for whatever minority. And I don't mean like a racial or ethnic minority. I mean like, you know, they bend over backwards for heroin addicts when most people aren't heroin addicts, right? And this is part of the issue. When you start bending over backwards for the exception and not the rule, you get all sorts of problems like this. And we're going to get to that momentarily. Plus, I've got some Obama audio that I wanted to continue with. But we have a few people that want to weigh in here, and I don't want to keep you on hold forever. So let's go to Chuck calling from Columbia, South Carolina, on the Rich Valdez AmericaAtNight.com live stream. Go right ahead, Chuck.
Yes, well, it's a little off topic now, but this fellow that called in concerned about pollution from small mom and pop businesses, there's a lot more going on than that type of pollution. What we're ingesting and eating out of our stores is far more dangerous, and such as the ham that is sold in the U.S. that's banned in 160 countries. The European, there are at least 12 items that are banned in all of Europe that are sold in grocery stores every day. This is what our problem is and what we're raising our children on, and not so much as pollution of who peed in the river.
Yeah, interesting point. I appreciate it. Chuck from Columbia, South Carolina. And you're right. It's they make it about pollution, but it's not always about pollution. Of course, this environmental argument is not always about the environment. Oftentimes, it's about creating more rules, more power for more politicians. And, of course, they want to sell something, whether it's making a deal with China, who has all the mineral mining rights for lithium and nickel cadmium or whatever it was, that the other product that they use in order to create these electric car batteries, or whether it was Obama way back when he said we have to change to these different types of lights because, again, the deals were cut. It wasn't always about the environment. For me, I land on the side that it's always about the economic impact, and usually something that impacts them personally in one way or another. Chuck, thanks again for your call. I appreciate it. Let us continue with our calls. Let's go to Doc in Wilmington, Delaware, WDEL. Doc, go for it, my man.
Yeah, I want to give a sidebar to the election. I want to talk about the election tonight, about what I'm hearing. We've had a turnover in the state Republican Party here. We've got a gal from downstate, which is very conservative. You know Delaware, you've been in the area. It's only 3 counties. Our northern county is like the rest of the Northeast, moderate to liberal. Our 2 southern counties are very conservative. We've got a downstate gal who's head of the party. She's a Trumpster, and let's see who she's going to run for statewide office. That's not going to fly in this state. I'm hearing a lot of talk in Delaware as I go around to the restaurants and pubs about Chris Christie in Delaware coming on strong from people that used to support Trump. And believe it or not, I'm hearing a lot of talk from people that used to support Joe Biden as saying he's too old. They like Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
Yeah, well, listen, this is exactly what we're going to see in a primary, Doc. I think you're always going to hear that. I don't know that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is the most viable candidate, but I do know that he's definitely going to appeal to a lot of people because he's younger than Biden. And, of course, he's running against Biden, not against Trump. I think in a matchup between RFK Jr. and Trump, I think that he definitely doesn't win. I just don't see it happening. But I think he's definitely a spoiler for Biden and is going to peel off some of the votes that they need, because I think there is still a number of JFK type of Democrats that vote for Biden, and they do it begrudgingly. They hold their nose and they're like, you know what, I don't like this guy, but nice Irish Catholic. This is my guy, Joe Biden. He's a little weird, but he's not Trump. And so you have those Democrats that are opting for RFK Jr. as opposed to Biden. And I think that only helps Trump in the end. They're not the same voter, but I think they're both anti-Biden voters ultimately, and that will help Trump is how I see it. But it's interesting, and I agree. I think he's going to continue to get traction. I know he just did. I think it was yesterday. I'm not sure if it was yesterday or the day before, but I know he just recently sat down with Joe Rogan on one of probably the most popular podcasts in America, the Joe Rogan Experience. And that's going to, really shoot his numbers up, because people who've never liked politics, people who've never liked RFK Jr. are now going to have, a 2-hour, 3-hour interview with Joe Rogan that is going to be all encompassing all over the place, where they're really going to get to know the man. And as they get to know the man and see that interaction with Rogan, I think it's going to open their eyes, and they're going to say, So I think that's going to help him a lot, honestly. And I think he's going to continue to move up in the polls. Right now, he's probably got the highest favorability of anybody that's leading in the polls, including Trump. I saw one poll where his numbers look better than Biden's and Trump's in terms of favorability. But then again, he doesn't have any political experience, right? He doesn't have a record to run on. So clearly, people are going to say, yeah, I like him better because these two clowns, I don't like Trump or I don't like Biden. So that makes sense to me, because it becomes a non-binary option. But ultimately, I don't think people are going to, en masse get behind RFK. And if they do, and I'm wrong, I'm happy to see that happen too. It'd be great to see that kind of shift in American politics. I just don't see it happening yet. Thank you, Doc. I appreciate the call. More from the rest of you in America that are calling in. Thanks for the calls. Continue to hold. We're getting to you momentarily. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. He's brown, he's bald, and he's breaking it down. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I think the trans issue has come on as a more divisive issue in the context particularly of sports, where it's also been weaponized, and issues around pronouns. I remember the first time I was on Zoom, and all of a sudden I saw these different pronouns, and that even took me, I was like, what's this? Mm-hmm. I didn't fully understand that. I think a combination of those factors, the weaponization of grievance and dehumanization that I see of politicians that are exploiting this, like Ron DeSantis notably, but not unique to DeSantis, have also exacerbated this.
That's, again, Governor Gavin Newsom doing his best to put himself in the best light, and I think he's doing a horrible job. He goes from talking about the trans issue and making it seem like that's a good thing. I don't think there's anybody really in any large number that says, man, this is the best thing ever. The best thing ever is that we've got biological males competing against girls in girls' sports, other than Gavin Newsom and those individual trans athletes. He's a clown. This is a clown show. Let's go to George in Topeka, Kansas, KMAJ. George, you're on with Rich Valdez. Go right ahead.
Hey, Rich, how are you, man?
Wonderful, thank you.
Hey, I'll try and make it quick here. So my late grandmother, I'm 37, in the mid 90s. I remember her telling me she was at the time she was very progressive by the terms. And I remember her telling me, I always remember, as she said, you know what? There's a difference between men and women and how they're built and what they can do with their bodies. Women have a job, men have a job. And I don't mean that in any way, but I'm very confused with the narrative nowadays. I feel like I'm almost going crazy with the trans, and it frustrates me, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels like just because I don't think that men should participate in women's sports, it doesn't mean that I'm a transphobe.
Well, you see, that's where you go wrong, George, because they created this term of transphobe to describe somebody that disagrees with them, right? If you don't think that a biological male should compete against a biological female in a biological female sport, then you are a transphobe. You are a xenophobe. You are this and you are that. And this is exactly what they do. And they bring that into Hollywood. They bring it into the media. They bring it everywhere. Not to go too far off on this because we don't have a ton of time, but I want to share this with you because it's a story that I wanted to talk about tonight, where the Oscars are now changing the rules because they have this ridiculous new diversity rule for Best Picture. In order to win Best Picture in the Oscars, you have to include a storyline and actors that make up underrepresented group, or at least 30% have to come from two or more of these underrepresented groups: women, ethnic minorities, LGBTQ, or the disabled. So just imagine that, right? You can't now win an award for a good film if you don't follow their rule. And if you don't follow their rule, they'll come up with a phobe name for you. That's exactly how they do it. Lamentably, that's what it is, George. And now you, a regular guy, just wants to go to work every day and thinks that men are men and women are women and boys should be boys and girls should be girls. Now, all of a sudden, you're the bad guy, George.
Do you feel like sometimes, and this sounds horrible, but I think the ultimate answer would be a highly touted man coming over to women's sports and dominating, and to wake people up. And you want to say woke, it could wake up the woke.
Right.
Like,
You know, it's a good point.
We can't be that stupid.
Yeah. You know, we saw something like this happen in I like UFC, and in MMA, there was a male MMA fighter that crossed over to become a female MMA fighter, but he was clearly still built like a man, even though he identified as a woman and grew his hair out and whatever. And ultimately what ended up happening here is that in his first fight, he fractured his opponent's orbital bone, you know, the eye socket, you know, cracking their skull. And nobody batted an eye. It was like huge gains, great victory for new trans athlete in women's sports. These things, I mean, again, if you're controlling the narrative, you're going to win every single time. And that's why we need voices like yours to keep speaking out. Have a good night, George. Thank you so much. Big shout out to everybody in Topeka, Kansas on KMAJ. The rest of your calls are coming up right now. Give you the phone number, 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. America at Night with Rich Valdez.
And we continue with Open Phone America. Let's go to Roseburg, Oregon, KQEN. Let's go to Raymond. What's up, my man?
Hey, Rich. I've just been thinking a lot about the 2020 election still, and
particularly when they thought it was over and Trump, he told Pence not to certify the electoral votes, and Pence still did. And I was always just kind of wondering what would have happened if Pence listened to what Donald Trump said.
Well, I think what would have happened, and again, I don't know because it's untested, right? They don't have any precedent for this, but I think what would have happened was Pence would have said the states that have electors that are in question, right? Because it wasn't Trump that was questioning this, nor Pence per se. It was the actual state legislatures that were saying, no, we want to issue a new slate of electors. So I think it probably would have ended up in the Supreme Court, but it would have been, I'm guessing it would have ended up being a states' rights issue where the states would have had the final say, because the Constitution in Article 2 says that it's the state legislatures, not the governors and nobody else, but the state legislatures that dictate the time, the place, and the manner of elections. So that makes up who the electors are going to be as well. And that's, I think, the case law that they would have gone to. But nobody would have known. And I think this is why Trump was saying, he wasn't saying to just not count them. He was saying, send them back and let them send what they want to send from those states. And we don't know what will happen because he didn't try to do it, and it had never happened before. But good question and interesting outcome it might have been. Thanks for the call from Roseburg, Oregon on KQEN. Let us continue with Abrams in Montauk, New York. Abrams, go right ahead.
Hi, Rich. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thanks. So I'm talking about kind of past story now, like the coronavirus. We all talked about the origins. Now, do you think there's some suspicions there, first off, or do you think government gave us like the true story?
I don't know. I always question what the government tells us. I take it with a grain of salt.
Back when I first, because I'll tell you this, when I watch the news first, I believe it, but what happened that changed my mind is, right, when I first moved into my neighborhood, Asian fella was coughing right before this whole thing started, and I asked him about it. He pretended like he don't know what's going on.
I see. All right, you're cutting in and out, Abrams, but thank you for the call. I'm not sure where we were going with that one. I'm a little puzzled there. But, there were lots of people, I think, that were sick at the end of December and continued to be sick all throughout 2020 into 2021. And it was a crazy thing. I'm glad it's behind us. Let's see. What do we got here? We've got 40 seconds. Let's go to Pat in Sedona, Arizona, listening online. Rich Valdez, AmericaAtNight.com. Pat, go right ahead.
Boy, I got 40 seconds. Here we go. Hey, David, how about we give a big cheer out to all those kids in California that say, get this crazy nick and poop transgender stuff out of our schools. We are kind, we are nice, we accept, but we don't want it jammed down our throat.
Excellent point, Pat. And you know what? I saw a story this week where kids actually were pushing back against this trans stuff, and they weren't being so kind. They were being a little bit rough, but there's clearly a battle, a culture war, and it's spilling into the kids. They're saying enough is enough. We don't want this stuff being pushed upon us. Anyway, thank you, Pat. Big shout out to you in Arizona. Take care, good night, and God bless you. Until the next time, hasta la próxima. I am Rich Valdez. Thanks for tuning in to America at Night.